Yes, thank you. Thanks, Jesse. Like Jesse was saying, my name is Brandon Sellers. I am the VP of Biz Dev here at Collabspot. Here to talk to you definitely about Collabspot, our tool, but specifically how Collabspot, our tool, actually helps sales teams maximize their time in front of customers and therefore drive sales, which to me is definitely one of the most important um, topics in sales today, and also seems to be one of the most least talked about topics in sales. So I'm going to talk to you guys through how it's going to work today. I'm going to talk to you guys through a couple of core really challenges that we see standing in front of sales reps and them maximizing their time in front of customers. We'll talk through some best practices, and then we'll dive into a demonstration of our Collabspot Connect tool. So real quick, I'm going to set the stage by talking about the sales concerns for sales, or the top concerns for sales leaders in 2018. Now, this is a CEB Insights report, and it notes that new customer acquisition, sales talent acquisition and retention, and existing account retention and growth are the top three challenges for sales leaders going into 2018, right? And that's no surprise to anyone here. I don't think anyone's surprised that sales is what sales leaders are focusing on. These things, that lead to new customer acquisition and account retention and growth change rapidly, right? So sales ops, planning and go-to-market, value proposition, messaging, indirect channel partner management. These things tend to fluctuate with this CEB, which is now Gartner report. However, new customer acquisition, existing account retention and growth, these things just become more and more important, and they've become more and more important over the last few years. And as really the expectations of sales people have been increasing, we've seen a overall decrease in actual sales, overall sales performance, right? So in 2012, we saw that 63% of salespeople were hitting quota. We've seen a steady decrease down to 53% in 2016 of salespeople making quota, right? So, and this is kind of in the midst of a ton of investment in sales technology, right? So we see investments in predictive intelligence, artificial intelligence, all these outbound platforms, account-based marketing and sales platforms. See a ton of investment there, even Sugar's own Hint. We also see investment in sales methodology from Champ and Bant and Challenger sales and things like that. We should be getting better, but the data isn't necessarily bearing that out. So we ask ourselves why. What's going on that sales folks are not having the upward trajectory that we would assume? Well, actually, Simpson Consulting, they did a analysis of how the average sales rep spends their time. And this is an average performing sales rep, I should say. And they spend about 40% of their time doing just administrative tasks, right? And then so that ends up meaning they only spend about 35% of their time actually selling to customers, doing any sort of sales activity. Right, so that's a pretty big chasm. That could be a problem, right? And we look at a high performing sales rep, they spend 20% of their time doing administrative tasks and 55% of their time actually in front of customers selling, right? And then so our challenge, and what we're kind of undertaking is figuring out, okay, how can we have all of our sales reps allocate their time and the way a high-performing sales rep does. And then so what we're going to do is we're going to talk to you guys about these three core challenges that are, facing all reps in terms of how they're spending their time. And then we'll talk through some best practices about how we can, help them overcome these challenges. So they're not spending a ton of time on this admin stuff, but are spending a ton of time in front of customers. So core challenge number one is time spent building a company Rolodex. And that's really kind of the core of any CRM strategy and really the core of any collaboration strategy, which is so important because sales teams that do have a collaboration strategy see a 21% increase in overall quota attainment. So that's key stuff. But what happens is, one of two things, right? Sales reps can sometimes fall behind in, adding contacts to the CRM to a point where they have, all these contacts that they're emailing, but they aren't in CRM, so there's no collaboration. Or they are adding contacts to the CRM, but they're flipping back and forth, copy and pasting things over, so they don't actually get. So they're spending, 3 hours a week, 4 hours a week just doing data entry, right? So none of that is efficient. That's not what we want to do. However, with something like Collabspot, what you can do is you can actually, we actually bring Sugar into Gmail to a point where all you would need to do is hover over a contact email, and we'll show this in the demo. Hover over the email so you can understand, hey, are they actually in the CRM? If they are not, you can just click a couple buttons and actually add them as a contact, right? So brings Sugar into your CRM, helps you understand if they actually are in your CRM, and then gives you the ability to, without flipping back and forth, add the contacts into the CRM. Now, another interesting case that I see all the time is we'll have sales reps that, they slip behind and, they have, a week or a month or years worth of contacts in their inbox that they haven't actually added at all into the CRM. And then so to solve that problem, you would have to, maybe go back in your email history and then just go through every email, see who's not in there, and then do that whole song and dance. Instead of doing that, what Collabspot actually does is it takes the information that's in your CRM, sees who's in your CRM, and it sees what contacts you're emailing back and forth, analyzes those, tells you, okay, these are the people that are not in your CRM, they're emailing back and forth that should be in your CRM, gives you a list of them, and in 1 or 2 clicks, you can quickly add them all to your CRM, right? So that makes it easy to add all of these back contacts into your CRM. All right, core challenge number 2, time spent logging communications. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to just like beat this into everyone's head. An average salesperson spends 65% of their time not selling, right? And then 40% of that, like we said, it was administrative tasks, and a ton of that admin time is just simply logging communications. And because we have so much of these predictive intelligence tools, artificial intelligence, pipeline management, forecasting, we have all this stuff that goes on. We need to have this communication data in CRM, but it can be so time consuming to add. So what we recommend actually is just automatically log a lot of that communication, right? So not necessarily add all the emails into Sugar because that can get incredibly cluttered very quickly. But what Connect does is we actually take the communication data that you have flowing back and forth between your inbox and really your entire team's inbox, and then we display it actually in Sugar in a sidebar. So then you can see a complete 365-degree view of anyone at your team that has been in contact with anyone at your prospect, in an opportunity, an account, a contact, or a lead, and display that information. Then you can easily look through and then copy that stuff to the CRM in one click, right? But there's also the use case, of course, where you're adding contacts, you are sending emails back and forth, and maybe you want to have this into the CRM. You don't want to flip back and forth. You can easily, quickly, reply, and then use Collabspot to actually select send and save, and then it will sync to the CRM automatically from there. All right, and core challenge number 3, which is very close to my heart because as a salesperson, as a biz dev person, I'm actually a hunter at heart. And then so I really know very well that how much of a better engagement rate from an email that you receive, if that's an introduction from a trusted advisor rather than just a cold email, right? That's always going to be much more effective. But the thing is, how do we know who at our company can do a great introduction for us, right? Unless I go around asking everyone, hey guys, do you know this prospect? You know this prospect? I'm not really going, and I spend the time to do that. I'm not really going to know, so I might have to just suffer with an inefficient email when I could be getting this warm introduction. With Collabspot, because we already pull in that communication data, we can actually graphically display it in a couple of different ways that make it really easy to understand your relationships. So what we have here is just a relationship analytics graph, and that would just simply map for an opportunity, an account, a contact, a lead, who at my company is in contact with that person, with the person at this account or contact or prospect. So then I know who I want to get, who I want to get to give me a cold introduction for various reasons, right? And then I can also actually grade my relationships as well, because a relationship that you've been in contact with over the past 2 days is a ton different than a relationship that you've been in contact for the past 8 months or even 2 years, right? So I can see graphically displayed by Connect, how, if it's a one-way conversation, how many conversations there were, are there meetings involved? So I can use all that data to better grade my relationships, right? And then so I'm actually going to just jump into the demo at this point. I'm going to back out here. And this is Collabspot Connect sitting inside Gmail. And then so as you can see, it brings in all of these Gmail modules, or I'm sorry, these Sugar modules. And then so if I wanted to jump into an account, I had a specific account in mind, I could say, okay, I want to look at accounts, and then I could search for an account. Let's just, I don't know if we have any accounts named Dan, but if I had an account named Dan, I could search for that, pop up, and I can jump into this account. I can see anything, of course, related to the account. And then I can edit this account. And I can do this with any record, whether it be a custom module or not. I can jump in, search for it, find it, and edit it according to the access rights that you have allowed in Sugar, right? So if I'm a sales rep and I can only, edit certain information, Collabspot Connect is going to respect that. And then let's say if I jump into an email here, as I said before, all I need to do is simply hover over email address, and then I'll see my record pop up, just so you have a more interesting example. It'll automatically find my contacts for me. And then if I have a contact that I actually don't have in my CRM, such as myself here, it'll, of course, let me know that this isn't in my CRM. And I can just click Add to Sugar as a contact. I can go through, fill out any information that I need, then click Save Changes. It'll create that contact. Now, as we were saying before, a big use case for sure is adding communication data into CRM, right? So if I receive an email and I know I want to have this in Sugar, no need to go back and flip between Sugar. All I need to do is click Save to Sugar CRM, or I could click Save to Sugar CRM. I'm going to go ahead and click Save to Sugar CRM right now. We get a little dialog box that pops up. And I can decide, okay, who do I want to sync this email to? What record? I can decide what records, opportunities, etc. I can even search for any record that I would like. And if I actually had attachments on this email, I could add any attachments. Then I just simply click Save. Automatically going to save over into Sugar. Right? Now, if I were to actually go here and click Quick Save, it is actually going to automatically save to this account and these contacts, right? So it would automatically save to any account that your contacts are related to, along with the contacts if you were to just quick save to SugarCRM. I can do the same thing from a reply standpoint. So if I had an email, I can actually also drop in email templates. And these are straight from Sugar's own library. So I can pop open my email templates. I can click insert. It's going to fill in any variables. Then I could click send and quick save. Again, it's going to go ahead and quick save to the contact and any account that the contact is connected to. Or I can click open and save. And then it'll allow me again to choose where I want to sync these emails to. And then I click send. I can also, as we were saying previously, I have my awesome new contacts feature, which I can use to go ahead and jump into. And I can say, hey, what contacts do I need to add right now? Looks like over the last 7 days, I have everything covered. Over the last 15 days, however, it looks like I have quite a few contacts that I have not added to my CRM. I jump in there. I can look, see if I have anything to add. Let's just go ahead and add any extra information. I look, I can save changes, and my entry is now created. And then so I can do that, so I can go back, and then I can easily make sure that I add all of these contacts into Sugar without having to go back and search for these different contacts. Super cool, super effective. Also, something I didn't mention actually in the presentation is also calendar sync, which is important. And then so what Collabspot does actually is it takes whatever, it actually creates a calendar called SugarCRM, and it will take whatever is in this calendar and it will sync it back to Sugar, or anything that's in Sugar, in our Sugar calendar, it will sync it back to this purple calendar. It's purple for me here in Gmail. So that way I don't have to go back and forth in terms of copying over information to my Sugar calendar. Now, as for what we have in Sugar, which is more automatically brought in, this all kind of starts with my favorite portion of it, which is the latest activity details, right? And then so this, as I was saying before, just gives you a live feed of anyone that is connected with this opportunity. So any one of these contacts, and anyone at my team that has Collabspot Connect. And then so I can see all of the emails that are going back and forth. And if I want to add and copy email, I can just quickly jump over and just click copy to CRM. It's going to be copied over. This would be the same thing if I had any attachments, right? I would just get a feed of the attachments. I can just click and quickly add them to CRM. Now, I kind of went into a little bit of the graphical displays that Collabspot offers. And then one of them is this last 90-day graph, which is really great, again, for understanding your relationships, right? And then so let's take this from an opportunity point of view, right? If I am a sales rep and I am saying that this deal is definitely going to close, over the next week. This deal in particular has a pretty strong overall engagement. But if I saw, I hadn't had contact until April, or we can take a qualitative look and understand that, this deal is probably not going to close in a week if you haven't talked to them since April, right? So this is what this last 90-day graph kind of really gives you the opportunity to do. Is just understand what the strength of this relationship is, and then kind of what the velocity of the relationship is here. Now this deal looks like it's going pretty well. We have 3 outbound emails going back and forth, 3 inbound emails going back and forth. It's a pretty pretty solid velocity overall. We've just had a recent meeting. So this still looks like it's going well. What I can then look at is this overall contact engagement graph. And what this does is it shows me how many contacts I'm actually emailing. Not just how many contacts, not just how many emails, but how many actual contacts at a company are going back and forth. Now, I think we've all heard the stat that there are 6.8 buyers in the purchase decision at during every B2B purchase decision. This kind of gives you a way to understand, hey, how deep am I into this account? What relationships overall do I have that I can leverage? How many people are we talking to, right? And then so this is just another way to grade your relationship. And we've seen customers really be able to increase their accuracy of their forecasting by being able to take this sort of qualitative look. And then our open engagement details screen, this does, again, kind of shows you, okay, who are we talking to, and overall, what's our overall engagement score. And then, as we talked about in the PowerPoint, we have our relationships analytics graph. And this does an awesome job of showing me, our guy Chris here, he's doing most of the talking here. But this does a good job of showing me, hey, who has strong relationships at my company, which is in blue, with a prospect, which is in orange here, right? So I can see Chris, he's sent 57 emails. He's received 18 emails from Betty. He's also sent 49 emails and received 14 from Jane. Then we have Jen over here, who she's just sent a couple emails to Betty and received a couple emails. So if we want to do any sort of introduction here, it's pretty clear. Chris would be our guy. And then if we back out of this here, we actually, in our table view, we can see similar graphs, right? Let me see if I can filter. And then so we can see two things. We can see our overall communication graph, and then we could also see this communication score that goes from 1 to 99. And then so this is really great for a little bit of pipeline management, right? So if it's the end of the quarter and I know that I want to focus on deals that are going to close, right? We need to focus on deals that are closing now. I can simply filter by my communication score, and I can actually get a really good idea of what deals are on their way to closing, right? Obviously, like, you'd want to do a little bit more of a qualitative, take a little bit more of a qualitative look, but to kind of get you started, you can definitely search by our communication score, because those deals with that communication velocity are most likely going to be, especially in a given stage, are most likely going to be the ones that you're going to be able to close. And that can go reverse as well, right? So when you're talking, so it's when, it might be more toward the beginning or the middle of a quarter, when you want to avoid overall deal slippage, you can look to your communication score as well and say, hey, where are we falling off in terms of our communication, and where can we as a team kind of collaboratively take a look and see where we can plug in and do a little bit more there. All right. So guys, that is actually kind of a quick overall view of Collabspot Connect in the sidebar that actually sits in Gmail, and which is a little bit newer, our sidebar that actually sits inside Sugar. So now, definitely a good question time.
Yeah, Brandon, thanks for that. This is Caleb with FABSG. We did have a couple of questions that came in. One of the attendees was curious if Collabspot did anything in the way of tracking emails. So if you send out an email, are you going to be able to identify if a specific person opened or clicked that email? Is there any functionality within Collabspot for that?
So we do have email tracking. Unfortunately, my demo build actually does not show that right now, but we do have basic email tracking where we will, in the sidebar, we will alert you if someone opens an email, and then we'll show kind of in the thread what emails have been opened and what time they open. So we do have email tracking, yes.
Got it. Great. Yeah, and just from my perspective too, I also use Collabspot, and it's really helpful too. There's also a feature within the Collabspot plugin there where you can actually set yourself reminders. So as a sales rep, we often send a lot of emails that sometimes don't get answered within a couple days. So when you send out an email, you can set up a reminder so that you actually get an email reminder to remind yourself to follow back up with that person within 2 or 3 days if they haven't responded. So really helpful to stay on top of, prospects that you might want to have to reach out to every 2 or 3 days. That way nothing's falling through the cracks and you're definitely checking in with them as often as you can. So that's definitely a feature that I like a lot about Collabspot. And also too, just within this panel that Brandon has up, your filters actually come over into Collabspot also. So if you open up an account, you'd be able to see a list of all the filters that you have built within Sugar. So I typically have a lot of filters myself for the list of my top accounts and accounts that do a lot of business with us. So it's a quick and easy way to look at a list of all of your top accounts right there within Gmail, instead of having to go over into Sugar and open it up. And as Brandon showed you, you can make edits to those accounts as well. So those are some of the features that I really like about Collabspot myself, using it here. It looks like another question came in. So the question was, does Collabspot account for mandatory fields in Sugar for contacts, opportunities, and so on? So for example, if a field is labeled as mandatory, I suppose required in Sugar, will it only save in Collabspot if all of those fields are entered? Does that make sense, Brandon?
Absolutely. Yep, and it absolutely does. So we completely respect your access rights that you have set in Sugar, right? So access rights or your required fields. So there's no extra, setup or anything like that. We have just kind of a quick example is when I create a contact field, this last name is a required field. So if I went ahead and save it, it would not let me save it. This field is required.
Great. And also worth pointing out, I know that this demo is very much focused on the Gmail side of things, but Collabspot also does integrate with Office 365. So if you're using Office 365, this Collabspot plugin works pretty much the exact same way with that as well.
It does. It also works for Mac on desktop. So I know we get a lot of people kind of contacting us about that specifically. So that's kind of an underserved market right now. So our extension does work for Mac for the Outlook desktop version.
Great. It looks like that was, I think, all the questions that we had, and that leads us to 1:30 Eastern time here right in the dot. I guess Brandon or Jesse, anything else you guys want to leave the webinar with?
One more question came in. Can Collabspot create a calendar reminder?
Can Collabspot create a calendar reminder? I don't know.
I would say no. If I'm guessing that is coming in from the Sugar side of things, I don't believe we have that capability yet. So I would say no, unfortunately.
All right. Well, that was the last question. If any questions do come up after the webinar is over, feel free to email me. I'll hear some more questions are coming in. Sorry, Brandon.
No worries. Let's do it.
When you sync to calendar, it doesn't set a reminder? That's the question.
Okay. I think I understand what you're saying. So, and correct me, let's try to have a fluid conversation from voice to text here. So I believe what you're saying is if you have something in Sugar that you add as a calendar entry, and then you sync it, and then it's going to sync back to Gmail, and then so it's going to be sitting in this Sugar calendar, and then you want a reminder connected to that. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Because, okay, cool. So that's more on your Gmail than it is on us. So it should, I'm almost positive that's going to set a reminder, but as you can see here, this is just something that's automatically set in Gmail, so it should be set for you as well. So that's going to be more of the Gmail settings than it is in Collabspot.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just pause for another 10 seconds here, see if something else comes in.
All right.
Brandon, maybe you can, if you have your contact information, you can throw that up there on the screen, or Caleb. You know, I think the best thing to do is if you're working with Caleb, to get in touch with Caleb, or myself, you know, and reach out to me in one of my many invites to today's webinar. Of course, we recorded it, so we'll send out a recording for you guys so you can use it again, watch it with your team, to take some deeper dives, and we can always, you know, some people are here for some training, and some people are here to see it for the first time. So, you know, we can always schedule some further time if needed to go through Collab.
Yeah, definitely. If you are here looking from a training standpoint, definitely reach out, because we can definitely provide some maybe a deeper dive, as well as, you know, kind of talking through, you know, your specific use case and how you can best leverage Collabspot. So definitely reach out, especially if you have training needs.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it looks like we got one more question as I was blabbering along there. Let's see if I can. Let's see. All right. So for the activity section in Sugar, it will pull calendar entries in the activity log, correct? Meaning, if a calendar appointment is synced with Google Calendar, it'll also appear in the Sugar activity feed, or will it?
Yeah, it'll sync either way. So no matter what, in this activity feed where I have this calendar entry, which is in 10 hours from now, it's even if I turned off like my calendar syncing, it would always appear in my activity details.
Okay, cool. Thank you. All right, Brandon. I think you covered it all. We really appreciate your time. Caleb, thank you as well for your feedback and participation. Like I said, we'll send out a copy of the recording. You can review it with your team. Got any questions, feel free to reach out to Caleb or myself, and we will definitely help you out. We're real big fans of Collabspot and you, Brandon, so really appreciate you taking the time to show us this cool integration. So with that,
of course, no problem.
Everyone have a great rest of your week and a nice Memorial Day weekend. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.